Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Caris May, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Page. We warmly welcome the family of Private Vivian Ernest McMillan, whose story will be read shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of Prescott College Southern from Morphett Vale in South Australia. To commence this evening's ceremony, I invite you all stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Boys and girls, you now may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Vivian Ernest McMillan. Vivian McMillan was born on the 18th of April, 1893, the last of 16 children born to Archibald and Mary McMillan, Scottish immigrants who had settled in Canberra, New South Wales. Vivian grew up on the family estate, Rosebank, and went on to be a dedicated farmer. He and his brothers eagerly embraced new technology, using acetylene lights in order to plough by night. They were also founding members of the Canberra Rifle Club. Vivian's nephew Roy enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force shortly after the outbreak of war in 1914. He landed on Gallipoli on the 25th of April 1915, and the family was informed the following June that he had been wounded in action. They heard no more for months. In July 1915, Vivian and his brother Bob enlisted. They were posted to the 18th Battalion, leaving Australia together on the 5th of October on the troop ship Themistocles. The family would not receive confirmation that Roy had been killed in action until the following year. Vivian and Bob McMillan were first sent to Egypt, where they continued training in the desert. Vivian enjoyed opportunities to sightsee while training, writing at length in his diary with great reverence about the Sultan's palace in Cairo. In Egypt, the McMillan brothers also regularly met other recruits they knew from the Forbes district. One man, Jim Clark, later wrote of meeting them in Egypt. Local papers later reporting, Vic McMillan nearly dropped with surprise when Jim hit him on the shoulder. In March, the McMillan brothers were sent to France to fight on the Western Front, writing shortly after their arrival to say they were going strong in France and so far had escaped harm. In late May, Vivian wrote home again, this time describing the front line in the aftermath of a battle. After it was all over, we went up to the front line, and it was there that the horrible sights could be seen. For the stretcher bearers had removed nearly all the wounded, and it was mostly the dead which remained. The poor fellows were mangled about in all directions, and some only a hand, leg, or something of the kind could be found, the remainder being blown to pieces with a shell. This was the last letter that his parents would receive from Vivian. 8 days after writing, he was killed in action. It fell to his brother Bob to write home with the news. Poor Viv was out wiring, placing barbed wire in position between the enemy and our own trenches, and was stooping down at work when he received the fateful bullet, which entered the left temple, made its exit in the middle of the right side of the neck, and then entered the middle of the right shoulder. There is one consolation at least to know the end was instantaneous. Vivian McMillan was buried in a cemetery in nearby Bois-Grenier the same day, where his remains lie today under the simple words, "At rest." He was 23 years old. The following year, the third member of the McMillan family to go to war, Lance Corporal Bob McMillan, was also killed in action, aged 36. Vivian McMillan's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Vivian Ernest McMillan, his brother, Lance Corporal Robert Bruce McMillan, and his nephew, Private Roy Alexander McMillan, who gave their lives for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Could you all please stand for the ode and last post?
They shall grow not old as we that are left,
grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We would like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.